There are ghosts that don't rattle chains or hide in attics. They sit at the dinner table with you. They sleep in the empty bed in your old room. They stare at you from faded photographs on the mantelpiece. My ghost had a name, Daniel, my little brother, and my parents made sure he haunted me every single day of my childhood. I'll never forget the day my mother looked at me, her eyes as cold as a winter grave, and said, "God took the wrong child. It should have been you." She was holding his favorite toy soldier, and I was just 10 years old. Good morning, my dear friends. I hope you find yourselves in a place of warmth and peace today. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I am 74 years old. I'm speaking to you from my little cottage in rural Vermont, a place so quiet you can hear the snow falling. I'm sitting in my favorite armchair, the one with the floral pattern that's faded over the years, a warm mug of chamomile tea in my hands. Outside my window, the birch trees are covered in a blanket of fresh snow, and my cat, Tolstoy, is curled up by the fireplace. My life is quiet now. It is peaceful. It is everything I once prayed for in the dark. I spent my life as a librarian, surrounded by stories. It's funny, isn't it? I helped thousands of people find solace in the tales of others, while I kept my own story locked away on the highest, dustiest shelf of my heart. But it's time to take it down. And you, my friends who have found me today, I am so grateful for your company. Tell me in the comments, what city or country are you watching from? It warms my old heart to know how far these stories can travel. And if you have a moment, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Each time you do, it gives an old woman like me the courage to continue to turn the page on a chapter I thought was sealed forever. My story begins in a small, forgettable town in Pennsylvania, in the 1950s. We lived in a 2-story house with a squeaky porch swing and a big backyard dominated by a magnificent old oak tree. My father, Arthur, was a foreman at the local steel mill. He was a man of few words, built like the steel he worked with, hard, strong, and silent. He smelled of metal and sweat, and his love was shown in the roof he kept over our heads and the food on our table, never in hugs or praise. My mother, Helen, was the opposite. Before the accident. She was sunshine itself. She hummed while she baked, her hands always covered in flour. She filled the house with the scent of apple pie and lavender. Her world revolved around her 2 children, me, Eleanor, the quiet, bookish older sister, and Daniel, my little brother. Daniel was 2 years younger than me, and he was everything I wasn't. He was bright, loud, and fearless. He had our mother's sunny smile and a laugh that could chase away any storm. He was the favored one, the boy, the one who would carry on the family name. But I didn't mind. I adored him. He was my shadow, my playmate, my best friend. We were inseparable. Our favorite place in the world was that old oak tree in the backyard. It was our castle, our pirate ship, our spaceship. Its thick, sturdy branches were our ladders to other worlds. It was our secret kingdom. My father had forbidden us from climbing it. "It's too high, too dangerous," he'd say in his gruff voice. But that only made it more exciting. It was our one great rebellion. We'd wait until he was at the mill and Mom was busy in the kitchen, and we'd scurry up its trunk like squirrels, our laughter muffled by the leaf. He started climbing up after me, his small hands and feet finding the familiar holds in the bark. He was always trying to keep up, always wanting to do whatever his big sister did. "Wait for me, Ellie," he called, his voice full of excitement. He was just a few feet below me when his foot slipped. It all happened so fast, yet the memory plays in my mind in agonizing slow motion. The sickening sound of his hand scraping against the bark, his small gasp of surprise, the widening of his eyes as he looked at me. I reached for him, my fingers brushing against his, but I was too late. He fell. It was a long way down. There was no scream, just a terrible final thud as he hit the ground. For a moment, the world went silent. The birds stopped singing, the wind stopped blowing. I scrambled down the tree, my knees scraping, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. He was lying at the base of the tree, so still, his eyes wide open, staring at the blue sky he would never see again. I knelt beside him, shaking him. Danny, wake up, stop playing." But he didn't move. I saw the unnatural angle of his neck, the stillness of his chest. I screamed. A raw, animal sound of pure terror that brought my mother running from the house, a dish towel still in her hand. She saw him, and then she looked at me. Not with concern, not with worry for her other child who had just witnessed something so horrific. She looked at me with an expression that I would come to know better than my own reflection. It was the beginning of the blame. In that moment, I didn't just lose my brother. I lost my parents, my childhood, and the girl I used to be. The accident was over in a second, but my punishment, that was just beginning. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and hushed whispers. People from town filled our small living room, bringing casseroles that would sit untouched in the kitchen. And they spoke in low, sympathetic tones to my parents, but they looked at me differently. I was no longer just Eleanor. I was a living, breathing tragedy. The girl who was there, the girl who survived. In their pitying glances, I saw the reflection of my mother's accusation, and I learned my first lesson in grief. It is a lonely country, and I was its sole, exiled citizen. After the last mourner left, a profound silence fell over our house, a silence that was heavier and more suffocating than any noise. The humming stopped. The scent of apple pie vanished. My mother packed away all of her colorful dresses, and from then on only wore shades of gray, black, and beige, as if she were trying to blend into the shadows that now owned our home. My father retreated into the steel mill, taking on extra shifts, returning home late and leaving before I woke up. His silence had once been a quiet presence, now it was a gaping void. He never spoke Daniel's name, and he never spoke to me about what happened. By not defending me, by not offering a single word of comfort, he became a willing accomplice to my mother's silent persecution. He built an invisible wall around himself, and I was left on the other side with her. My mother's grief was not a quiet river. It was a glacier, cold and immense, and it reshaped the entire landscape of our family. She didn't shout or rage. Her cruelty was quieter, more meticulous, and 1,000 times more painful. Daniel's room became a shrine. She kept it exactly as he had left it that summer morning. His toy soldiers were still lined up on the windowsill. His baseball glove sat on his neatly made bed. She would spend hours in there, dusting objects that were already clean, her back to the door. The room was forbidden territory for me. Once I dared to peek inside, my hand on the doorknob. She turned, and her eyes were not sad. They were filled with a chilling hatred. "Get out," she whispered, her voice like the rustle of dead leaves. "This is a good boy's room. You are not welcome here." From then on, I would walk past that closed door as if it contained a contagious disease. Life became a series of small, deliberate cruelties. Sometimes she would set the dinner table for 3 people, herself, my father, and the empty chair where Daniel used to sit. I would have to fetch my own plate from the cupboard in silence. On his birthday, she would bake his favorite chocolate cake, place a single candle in the middle, and let it burn down to a stub on the kitchen counter. No one ate it. It was a monument to her loss and a testament to my sin. My own birthday, just a month later, was passed over in complete silence. It was as if I, too, should have stopped aging at 10 years old. To survive, I learned to be invisible. I became a ghost in my own home, gliding through hallways, making no noise, leaving no trace. I lived within the pages of my books, my only true refuge. School was no better. The teachers were overly kind, and the other children were wary, unsure what to say to the girl with a ghost for a brother. I ate my lunch alone, I read during recess, I walked home by myself. I was an island, and the sea of grief around me was rising. The sentence my mother had handed down that first day, "God took the wrong child," was not a one-time outburst. It became the unspoken mantra of our house. She never had to say it again. It was in every meal she served me without looking at me, in every chore she assigned me that used to be Daniel's, in every night she tucked in an imaginary boy in an empty bed while my own bedroom door remained open and ignored. Years passed like this, each one a repeat of the last. The sharp edges of grief are supposed to dull over time, but my mother polished hers daily. When I was 16, I came home from school to find her in the backyard, staring at the old oak tree. In her hand, she held an axe. My father stood on the porch, watching, his face unreadable. She didn't have the strength to swing it, so he took it from her. He didn't say a word. He just walked to the tree, our castle, our spaceship, our kingdom, and began to chop. The thud of the axe echoed the sound I had tried for 6 years to forget. I watched until it fell, until our entire world of make-believe was reduced to a stump. It was then that I understood. They weren't just cutting down a tree. They were erasing the last piece of my childhood, the last place where Daniel and I had been happy together. They were trying to erase me. That night, I looked at my reflection in the dark window pane of my bedroom. I saw a pale, thin girl with haunted eyes and a spine made of something stronger than they knew. They could take the tree, the memories, the love, but they couldn't take my will to survive. I wasn't the captain of a pirate ship anymore. I was a prisoner planning her escape. And I would get out. I swore it on the ghost of the little boy I used to love and the memory of the mother I had truly lost that day. I would find a new world, one where I wasn't defined by a falling boy and a cold, empty chair. The last 2 years of high school were a silent, calculated chess game. My parents saw a quiet, obedient daughter who did her chores without complaint and never caused any trouble. What they didn't see was the girl who was studying maps in the school library, memorizing the names of faraway cities. They didn't hear the silent promise I renewed every night, I will get out, I will survive you. My home was my prison, but my mind was my escape route, and I spent every waking moment planning the journey. School was my only sanctuary, and within it, the library was my temple. It was the one place where the whispers of my own life were drowned out by the voices of 1,000 different worlds. It was there I met Mrs. Peterson, my English literature teacher. She was a woman who saw more than just the quiet girl in the back of the classroom. She saw the essays I wrote, stories filled with characters yearning for freedom, for a life beyond the confines of their small towns. She saw the hunger in my eyes when I read poetry about the sea, a sea I had never seen. One day, she kept me after class. "Eleanor," she said, her voice kind but direct, "you have a gift with words, and you have a mind that is far too bright for this town. Have you thought about college?" College? The word itself sounded like a foreign language. In my family, girls were expected to graduate, find a simple job, get married, and repeat the cycle. The idea of further education was a fantasy. "My parents wouldn't allow it," I said, my eyes fixed on the floor. "It's not for me." She didn't push, but she did plant a seed. A few weeks later, she announced that the town library was looking for a student to help shelve books after school. "The pay isn't much," she said, looking pointedly in my direction, "but the company is excellent." I knew this was my chance. I approached my parents with the idea, framing it as a webu to stay out of the house and be productive. My mother was indifferent, but my father surprisingly agreed. The library was a respectable place, and a daughter who worked was better than one who moped around. He had no idea he was funding my rebellion. For 2 years, I worked at that library every evening. I would finish my homework, do my chores, and then escape to the quiet, dusty aisles. Every dollar I earned, every single cent, was not spent on soda or movie tickets. It was folded carefully and hidden in a loose-leaf binder tucked inside an old copy of Great Expectations. It was my freedom fund. With Mrs. Peterson's encouragement, I secretly filled out a single college application. It wasn't for a grand university, but for a small, affordable community college in New York City that offered a scholarship for literature students. New York. The name alone was a promise. It was a place so vast, so anonymous, that a girl like me could disappear and be reborn. Mrs. Peterson helped me with the application essay and even paid the small fee herself. "Every story deserves a chance to be read," she said, handing me the stamped envelope. I sent it off and tried to forget about it. It was a lottery ticket, a dream too fragile to hope for. I continued my work, my savings slowly growing. The binder was getting thicker. I had almost $200, a fortune for a girl like me in 1966. Then, one spring afternoon, the letter arrived, a thin, official-looking envelope addressed to me. My hands trembled as I opened it. I had been accepted, and I had been awarded the scholarship. It wasn't a full ride, but it covered tuition. It was a key. A real, tangible key to a new life. I held that letter like it was a holy relic. For the first time since Daniel's fall, I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated joy. I had done it. I had earned my escape. That night, I gathered my courage and went to the living room where my parents were sitting in their usual silence, the television flickering between them. "I have something to tell you," I said, my voice shaking but firm. I laid the letter on the coffee table. My father picked it up, read it, and grunted. "New York, college, who do you think is going to pay for that?" he asked, tossing the letter aside. "This scholarship covers the tuition," I explained, my heart sinking. "I've saved money for the bus ticket and a place to live. I can work while I study." He just shook his head. "Nonsense. Your place is here. Who will help your mother?" Then my mother, who had been silent, picked up the letter. She read it, her face a cold, hard mask. She looked at me, and her eyes were filled with the same icy resentment I had seen for 8 years. "So," she said, her voice dripping with venom, "you think you can just leave? You think you deserve a life, a future, after what you did? After you took my son from me?" The words hit me with physical force. "It was an accident," I whispered, the old useless defense. She let out a short, bitter laugh. "Your life ended the day his did, Aleo. Nor, you just haven't had the decency to lie down and die. You will not be leaving this house. You will stay here and live with what you've done." She tore the acceptance letter into small, neat pieces and let them fall to the floor like confetti at a funeral. And in that moment, I was finally free. The last shred of hope that they might one day see me, the real me, was gone. They didn't want a daughter, they wanted a memorial, a living monument to their grief. I didn't argue, I didn't cry, I simply turned and walked back to my room, the sound of tearing paper echoing in my ears. The scholarship had been my hope for an honorable discharge from this prison. They had refused. Now I would have to be a fugitive. That night, I pulled the old copy of Great Expectations from my shelf. I took out the binder, heavy with 2 years of saved dollars. I found the bus schedule I had hidden in its pages. The dream of college was dead, but the promise of New York was more alive than ever. The tearing of that letter was not an ending, it was a starting gun. For 3 more days, I played the part of the defeated daughter, moving through the house like a ghost, my face a perfect mask of resignation. But inside, a fire was raging. On the 4th night, I waited until the familiar rhythm of my father's snores filled the house, a sound that had once been a source of fear but was now the soundtrack to my liberation. I packed a small canvas bag with 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, my copy of Great Expectations with the money still tucked inside, and a photograph of a smiling 6-year-old Daniel from before the shadows fell. It was the only piece of my old life I wanted to save. The memory of the boy, not the ghost. I wrote a short note and left it on my pillow. It didn't say I was sorry. It didn't ask for forgiveness. It simply said, "I'm going to find a life. Goodbye." Walking through the dark, silent streets of the town I had known my whole life felt like walking through a graveyard. Every house held a memory, every corner a ghost. The bus station was a single dim light in the darkness. I bought a one-way ticket to New York City, the words feeling like a prayer on my tongue. When the bus finally hissed to a stop, I climbed on without looking back. As it pulled away, leaving the sleeping town behind, I didn't feel sadness or regret. I felt the exhilarating, terrifying lightness of a prisoner taking her first breath of free air. The journey was long, and I watched the sunrise paint the sky, feeling as though I was watching the dawn of my own creation. New York was a beautiful, chaotic monster. It was louder, bigger, and lonelier than anything I could have imagined. My first few months were a blur of survival. I found a small, clean room in a women's boarding house and a job washing dishes in a greasy diner. It was hard, anonymous work, but it was honest. And it was mine. Every evening, exhausted and smelling of bleach, I would find my way to the New York Public Library. Surrounded by millions of books, I felt I was home. I read everything I could get my hands on. I may have lost my scholarship, but I was determined to get my education, one book at a time. Eventually, I found a job working in a small, dusty bookstore in Greenwich Village. It was there, among the stacks of poetry and well-worn novels, that my new life truly began. And it was there that I met Michael. He was a history professor, a kind, gentle man with laugh lines around his eyes who came in every week looking for a new book to read. He didn't see a broken girl with a haunted past. He saw a young woman who loved books. He saw me. Our love story wasn't a dramatic romance. It was a quiet, steady chapter built on shared stories and mutual respect. We married 2 years later in a small ceremony at City Hall with a few friends from the bookstore as our witnesses. We built a life together, a life filled with books, music, and quiet happiness. We had a daughter, Clara, and I made sure her childhood was everything mine wasn't. Our home was filled with laughter, with warmth, with the smell of baking, and with love that was spoken aloud every single day. Clara never knew the full story of the grandparents she never met. I told her they had passed away when I was young, that they were quiet people from a small town. The lie was a shield, protecting her from a darkness that had no place in the bright world we had built. My past was my own burden to carry, not hers. I never heard from my parents again. I never went back. For all I know, they lived out their days in that house of whispers, tending to the ghost of their perfect son. I don't know if I ever forgave them, but I did come to understand that their grief had turned them into monsters. My victory was not in hating them, it was in refusing to become one of them. My happiness was my revenge. My dear friends who have stayed with me until the end, my story is proof that the last chapter is not always written by the same person who wrote the first. You may be in a house of whispers right now. You may feel like a prisoner in your own life, haunted by ghosts that are not of your making. Please, hear me when I say this, your story is not over. The axe that cuts down your childhood does not have to fell your future. You are stronger than you know, and you deserve a life filled with light. If this story has touched your heart, I ask you to please subscribe to this channel and share this video. There is a girl out there, sitting in a dark room, who needs to know that escape is possible, that a new life is waiting. Your share could be the key she is looking for. In the comments below, please leave the word freedom so I know that you heard my story and understood its heart. Always remember, you are the author of your own life. You have the power to turn the page, to start a new chapter, and to write yourself a happy ending. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening.